The story of Reflections of My Life begins, as all great songs do, not just with chords or words, but with a mood that transcends time. Released at the close of the 1960s when the world was teetering on the edge of change, the song stood as both a mirror and a balm. It carried a paradox at its core. The lyrics spoke with sorrow, longing, and a bleak assessment of life, yet the arrangement was sweeping, bold, and strangely uplifting. It sounded like resignation and survival wrapped into the same breath. That paradox is why it still lingers decades later, why it feels as alive today as it did in 1969. The roots of this song go back to Glasgow, where the band had started years earlier under the name the Gaylords, before eventually becoming Marmalade. They had already broken barriers by becoming the first Scottish group to top the UK singles chart with their version of the Beatles' Obladi Oblada. But Reflections of My Life wasn't about following someone else's formula. Its genesis was tied to a bold contract signed in late 1969 with Decca Records, a deal that gave them the freedom most artists only dream of, the ability to write, produce, and take their time. Out of that creative liberation came their most defining statement. The recording sessions were short, just 3 days in October of 1969, but ambitious. They brought in the full band, layering harmony vocals and guitars, and with Keith Mansfield arranging brass and strings, the track began to take on a majestic, almost cinematic quality. What set it apart musically was its hypnotic chord progression. Instead of chasing variety, they leaned into repetition. Verse, chorus, introduction, they all shared the same sequence, an 8-bar cycle that created a sense of circular inevitability, as if the song was reflecting back on itself again and again. Yet it never felt monotonous because every element, the bass, the swelling orchestration, the intertwining voices, added depth and variation. Then came the guitar solo, and with it, the song's most innovative flourish. Junior Campbell used a technique first popularized by the Beatles, a reverse tape process that involved flipping the reel and recording a solo against the backward track. When the tape was restored to normal, the result was an otherworldly sound, fading in and out like a dream slipping from memory. Cross-faded together with great care, this solo became a centerpiece, not a gimmick, but a statement. Marmalade were not content with a simple ballad, they were crafting something meant to last, a pop song elevated into art. Of course, a song is only as strong as the emotions it carries, and here the lyrics did their heavy lifting. From the opening line, "The changing of sunlight to moonlight, reflections of my life," you are swept into a world of shadows, regrets, and longings. It's a song of sorrow, of tears that never seem to dry, and of a world that feels like a terrible place. Yet the plea at its heart is simple and profoundly human. Take me back to my old home. There is grief here, but also resistance, the stubborn declaration, I don't want to die. That insistence turns what might have been a dirge into something closer to a hymn of survival. This blend of personal sadness and universal yearning landed at exactly the right cultural moment. In late 1969, the Vietnam War loomed large over the United States. Soldiers, many of them barely more than boys, were fighting in jungles thousands of miles from home, often unsure of the cause, often doubting whether they'd survive to return. The song never mentions the war directly, but it didn't need to. For those conscripts, its bleak vision of the world, its homesickness, its desperate desire to endure spoke volumes. It became, in its own way, an unofficial anthem of a generation weary of conflict and longing for home. Commercially, the song was a triumph. It climbed to number 3 in the UK charts and cracked the American top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, reaching number 10 and even higher on the Cashbox chart. It performed strongly around the globe, from Canada to Belgium, from Ireland to South Africa. It sold over 1 million copies within just a few years, and its radio play continued relentlessly, ultimately surpassing 2 million sales and earning awards for more than 1 million broadcasts in the United States alone. Wherever it was heard, listeners felt its pull. Proof that sorrow, when framed with beauty, can speak across borders and languages. Its legacy didn't stop there. The song was covered by Australian bands, turned into reggae by Rudy Thomas, even translated into Cantonese by the Hong Kong group Blue Jeans. Each version carried the same emotional weight, reshaped for a different audience, proving the song's core message was not bound to Scotland nor to the Vietnam era, but to the human condition itself. For Dean Ford, however, the song's meaning became much more personal as the years went by. After leaving Marmalade in the mid-70s, he drifted to Los Angeles, struggling with addiction, working as a limousine driver, often silent about the fact that he had once fronted a band with international hits. His life became its own reflection of hardship and quiet endurance. Then, in 2014, he revisited Reflections of My Life, recording a new version with producer Joe Tansen. This time, the words were not just youthful imagination, but lived truth. The sorrow, the resilience, the plea for survival, these were no longer theoretical lines on paper. They were the sum of a life marked by fame, loss, and a hard-won peace. The re-recording was his full-circle moment, and when Dean Ford passed away in December 2018, the song stood as his ultimate testament, a reflection of his journey from a hopeful young singer to a man who had lived every word he once sang. And that is the lasting power of Reflections of My Life. It is not just another hit single, not just a nostalgic relic of the late 60s. It is a song that grew with its listeners, that meant one thing in 1969, another in 1970 when it echoed through Vietnam, and yet another when his singer looked back on his life decades later. Its brilliance lies in that paradox, the bleakness of its words set against the grandeur of its music, and in the way it continues to remind us that life's darkest reflections can still be turned into something achingly beautiful. Long after its release, it still asks us to look inward, to carry sorrow with dignity, and to never stop yearning for home.